Hello, and welcome to this brief tutorial on VerseVault, the new memory tool inside Scripture Notes. This is a great way to learn the scriptures, to memorize them, and just remember where they're at. So I'm just going to briefly demonstrate how this works. If you open up the Games section of Scripture Notes, there's a couple of games here, Time Skimmer and VerseVault. So if I click VerseVault, it's going to open over here on the left in its own pane. I'm just going to close this now that it's open. And VerseVault has two modes. It has one mode for memorizing, and you're going to have spaced review to go back through those. And the second mode is just to basically either memorize phrases or just become familiar enough that you know where scriptures are found. I actually like that a lot, just so I refresh my memory about a particular verse and how to find it. And so what we're going to do first is add a set. Now, there are instructions for this as well. If you click instructions, it will go down through everything that I'm about to share with you. And so you can open those up. The first thing you want to do when you open up VerseVault is create your first set. Verses get added to a set, and that way you can kind of compartmentalize the scriptures that you would like to learn. So I've set up Old Testament Scripture Mastery, but if I click Add Set, I just put in a set name, and I'll be doing New Testament Scripture Mastery later, and I'll click Save, and there we go. So if I click on Old Testament Scripture Mastery now, you're going to see some verses down here. And I didn't try to populate this with too many, but there are quite a few there. There's a few different things that are going to happen in this area. You can train on a particular verse, and if you want to just do one verse at a time to train on them, you just click the train button next to that verse. If you want to go into training mode and flip between verses to either refresh your memory or just train on those verses, then you would go to this training mode button at the top. Quiz mode is when you want to be quizzed on the verses that are in that set. It's really easy to add verses to this. There's a few different ways. So I'm going to close that pane. I'll open up the library. We'll go to the Old Testament, and let's just go to Genesis 49, we'll say. And I'll close that library pane and just have the reading pane here. So if I go down here, I'll just add like this part is Joseph's blessing from his father. And so I could just say, okay, I'm going to click on links, add to VerseVault. Now this says in beta. There's a lot more we're going to be adding to this, but it's like brand new release. I think the critical bugs are worked out, but if you find a bug, just report it to me. And if you have an idea for something you'd like in there, let me know. But if I add this, it's going to say, well, which set do you want to add it to, or do you want to create a set on the fly? I'm just going to add it to the Old Testament Scripture Mastery, and we actually just saw it get added right here. These are not sorted by verse order yet. That'll happen soon. We're just too new releasing this. You can also add a verse here. So if I said, well, I also want to add Genesis 49, verse 23, here it is, and I can save that, and verse 23 gets added into the list. So that's how to get verses into a set. I can also remove a verse using that button. Now, if I train on that verse, this is pretty cool. It's going to give you the verse, and the very best way that I have been able to research on memorizing is to read through this verse enough to get familiar with it. And then what you're going to do is hide 5. What that does is it removes all the letters from a word except the first letter. So then you try and read through it again, and if you can do it, hide 5. Now, if you already know the verse, you may hit hide 5 several times and then just do it until you feel like you're confident. Once you've got it down to this point, and then you click blanks. And if you've got that down, just click memorized. And that will add the verse to the review section. So I'm going to go ahead and do this so that you can see what that looks like in just a minute. The next thing on here, you'll see this mnemonic. Now, for memory champions, people that have compete or just want to remember things really well, they've come up with a system of sounds for each of the letter or numbers 1 through 9 and 0. And so that's in the instructions. If you really want to get into this, you just memorize those sounds. And every verse that you put in here, we will generate a mnemonic for that helps you to remember that particular verse. So this is Exodus 19:5. I'm just going to put on my glasses here to read this. So the major system breakdown, 19 is T and P. 1 and 9 is the T sound and a P sound. So that's like tap is a word that would go in there. The 5 is an L sound. So the mnemonic that it generated, and we just generate this with AI, is imagine Moses standing before a giant tap pouring out water over a sparkling pearl. L for 5 representing a peculiar treasure. He holds a sign saying Exodus, and he tells the people, if you listen and obey, you become this treasure because all the earth belongs to God. The tap pours onto the pearl, linking Exodus 19:5 to being God's treasured possession through obedience. So the idea here is just to get a really good visual in your head of the reference and be able to tie that to the content of the verse. If you want to change it, just click edit. It will put that there, and then you can save any changes that you want. You can completely create something of your own, or you can completely ignore this section and not worry about it. Now we also generate topics that go with that verse, some key phrases, and you can add your own topics and remove these. You can remove the phrases, add your own phrases, and then we generate some questions that might be asked that would lead you to this verse, and you can put in your own questions. So if you're sort of like a missionary, you might say, well, this is a question somebody would ask me, and I would go to this verse as a reference for it. Or in some kind of leadership role, here's somebody comes into me and has this particular problem. Where is that verse? I need to remember that. What will happen now is those items will get used in the quiz, so that you'll be quizzed on that. The question will come up, or a phrase will come up, or the topic, and you'll have to remember, like, out of the choices that you see, which verse is it? And so we're going to go take a look at that in just a sec. So this is how to both memorize at the top with hide 5. You can always, if you start hiding, you're like, wait, what was that? You can hit full text. You can show the blanks and then mark memorized. It says now you've already memorized this verse. So let's go out of the training mode. Let's look at quiz mode. So if I say, okay, I want to be quizzed either on the verse text, it will pop up the verse, or on phrases or topics or questions, or just random. Like, just pick one of them and we'll see what it is. So like this one came up with the question, who do I truly choose to serve in my life? And so I'm going to say, that's probably Joshua 24:15. And it gave me a green background there, and so that was correct. And then here's the verse text, a different type of question. And so it shows this verse, and I'll just click, let's do this one. That's not it. So it's going to show in gray with a line through it. And so that's how you would progress. And then at the end, it will show you what you got right and what you got wrong. And you can click to train right from that screen, or you can just back out of it. We'll be adding a lot of features like best score and stuff like that later, but this is ready to get you started on your memory. So I'm going to back out of the quiz mode. I'll just show you training mode. Training mode just is the same thing that you saw a second ago, but you can click next verse, and so on, and move through the scriptures that way. Okay, now if I go back to the very beginning, I'm going to click Review Verses. And here we go. It put in the verse that we memorized. Now, let me hit back actually and open up Instructions, and then I'll hit Review Verses. So in the instructions, I'll just point out, here was the major system, the sounds that go with this, and there's an easy way to remember that system. Okay, I guess I don't have the exact, I was thinking I had this in there, but I don't. When you memorize a verse, at the beginning, you've got to review it more. I'll put the kind of timeline in there on the instructions, but at first you've got to review it like maybe an hour after you memorize it, and then 4 hours, and then a day, and so you're going to gradually grow the amount of time between when you have to review a verse. And so when you review this, it'll say when it was last reviewed, which is this day is today, and then it's telling me review by 5:03 p.m., which is basically immediately after I memorize that verse. It's going to be sitting there for me to review as soon as I can come over and take a look at this. That'll actually change to 1 hour from now. So it would be an hour from now, and then 4 hours, and then it would just grow to a day, eventually a week, a year, whatever. So you would come in here, and if you can remember the verse, you just click thumbs up, and then it's going to tell you what the next increment is when you'll review it. If you don't remember it, like maybe you had to hit full text and see it again, you can do first letters. If you do first letters and get it, give yourself a thumbs up. That's pretty good. But if you can do it from blanks, for sure, a thumbs up. If you need the full text and it's a little hard, there's no shame in hitting the thumbs down. The thumbs down is just going to say, I need to see this again in 1 day. And if you remember it, if it comes back to you and you're like, I'm good, then give it a thumbs up right after that. You can also hit train from here. If you hit train and you have to look at the content, you can click back. I would give a thumbs down to that so that you have another chance to review it. Okay, so let's say I hit thumbs up. What that's going to do is put it in the upcoming section. Now, if there were a bunch of verses in here, some I still needed to review, they would be in this top area, just like that verse was. But now that I've said I got it right, and so the verse is now in the upcoming section, it just shows next review. It actually shows today. We probably need to get the time in there, but 4 to 6 hours. So it would be tonight for me. And that's just a good way to see what's coming up. You'll have all your verses here. You'll be able to just say, I just want to get into train on this. I can't even remember it. You could hit the train button, or you could say, you know what, I've done that verse for years or long enough. I'm not going to keep studying that one. You can remove it. So no big deal. It's up to you how you want to use this tool. But this will be a very powerful tool for you to remember things. And so there will be a few more features to come. Right now, you can't put multiple verses together. Like if you have a verse range, I can't say Genesis 1, 26 and 27 to put in like the same thing. I have to add them as individual verses. So we'll see if we can do that. And also the ability to add your own content. So you may want to add like a quote. You might want to memorize quotes, and so we're going to support that. You could have a quote set that just has famous quotes, C.S. Lewis quotes or whatever. And let's see. Also, because this is scripture notes and we've got apocryphal text, you can add anything in the library that you want. So if you went to, I'll just go to a random verse here, and you can click the link and say add to Verse Vault right there. I'm in 3rd Enoch. And so that's another thing you can do is just memorize or get familiar with any of the texts that are in the system. So that's pretty much it for Verse Vault. I hope you'll start using it. We'll have probably some fun gamification as well to help you stay motivated to learning the scriptures better and getting into them on a regular basis. I think that's really important and super helpful to remember where verses are at when you need them. So with that, I'll see you soon.